For every man that is amazing in bed, you have at least 5 that are terrible. The younger they are, the faster they hump thinking that will make you finish. If the guy hasn't made you finish, let them know. Don't fake it, tell them what they can do to help you out. The older ones know that a good pace is key and understand the importance of communication. You realize you can always learn a new trick. New men come with new turn-ons and fetishes. If there is a second guy in the rough and tumble, as long as their Johnson's never touches, most guys are willing to try a threesome. Both men and women can fall in love with the person they are having casual sex with. Confidence in your own body and a good attitude will make you far more attractive to a guy than anything else. You might think you have a type. You probably don't, you're just going through a phase. Such were the advice I would give my girlfriends when we were in college because I had a lot of experience and a high body count. By the time I graduated college, I had already racked up 100 plus bodies, threesome, foursome, you name it, I have done it. Regrettably, I initiated a lot of my friends to this lifestyle. I was highly promiscuous. Although my upbringing played a huge part in it, as I was sexually assaulted multiple times by my stepfather, and there was a point before high school where I started deliberately seeking it. Looking back, I now know that I was brainwashed. Fortunately, I possessed above-average intelligence, which allowed me to excel academically and earn A's in all my high school classes. Despite facing abuse at home and not dedicating much time to studying, my grades remained consistently high, even while engaging in relationships with multiple boys from school. At a young age, my biological father chose to have no part in my life, leaving my mother to marry my stepdad, who unfortunately subjected me to a distressing experience of soul trauma, and he got me pregnant, and that continued to haunt me well into adulthood. As I embarked on my college journey, the patterns of promiscuity that had developed during my youth continued to affect me profoundly. While I wouldn't describe myself as outgoing, I did enjoy popularity among my friends. Some might even consider me an alpha female, as many women looked up to me due to the strength I gained from overcoming numerous traumatic experiences in life. Additionally, I possessed a high level of intelligence that allowed me to breeze through college without putting in much effort. During my college days, I sought intimacy with strangers I barely knew, using it as a means to escape the lingering effects of my past traumas. However, after graduating, my life took a troubling turn. I found myself battling addiction, which made it difficult for me to hold down a job. To support my habits, I clung to a financially well-off boyfriend. Though he may not have fit society's conventional idea of an ideal partner for someone like me, I was an addict, and he became my source of both financial support and the substances I craved. He seemed content to have me, regardless of the situation. I remember the turning point in our relationship when he basically switches between squishing me with all his weight while trying to shove his tongue down with lots of spit. He was then way too rough with his fingers down there, while he was obviously trying to pleasure me in some way, which was sad, because he seemed to think he knew what he was doing, and he was basically hurting me and making weird faces. It felt like he was trying to dig a dime out from between 2 couch cushions. Lots of poking around that just got faster and more desperate. I had to tell him to stop. Then he just wanted to jackhammer away and try to finish. I gave him about 5 minutes, hoping he would finish and just fall asleep. When he still hadn't finished, I was getting sore and felt like a hole in the mattress. He was obviously just lost in his own world. I mean, at that point, I might as well have been a flashlight. I ended it by telling him I needed a moment to pee, and when I got back the idea of sex was thankfully gone. We were both a little stoned, but man, I was ashamed of what my life had become. 2 months later I found out that I was pregnant. I panicked. I was only 23 years old, the last time it happened was when I was 14, and my stepdad was responsible. I wasn't ready to be a mother then, and I am not ready to be a mother now. I wasn't ready to be a mother at all. I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me. He wanted to keep it, but I didn't. So, I went to the clinic to get it removed. During the procedure, I lost a lot of blood, and I passed out and had an out-of-body experience for about 5 minutes. When I passed onto the other side, I saw the son that I should have had, the one I just removed, what he would have become and how happy I could have been. I went through a life review. I found out that I chose the life that I live in, I chose the color of my skin, I chose my mother, my stepdad, I found out that I chose the difficult life that I lived, and I had the strength to overcome. What I wasn't supposed to do was to abort the second time. He was the same soul that I removed at 14. That was why I had that experience, because I had a soul contract with God, the light, the source, you can call it whatever you want, and that's where we all come from, and I wasn't living by my contract and doing what I was supposed to do. I don't want to go into details about that experience because that's not what this story is about. However, when I came back to life, my life changed. I forgave my mom, my biological dad, and my stepdad because I now understood my purpose in life. And it helped me heal. The first thing I did after that experience was to break up with my boyfriend. I cleaned up myself, started exercising, fasting, and meditating. I also found a good paying job. Then something miraculous happened in my life. I found my now husband when I was 25 years old. He is a clean-cut good guy. I would never have gone for someone like that 2 years earlier. Even my friends that knew me expressed that he was not my type. What my girlfriends didn't realize was that I was a changed person. I tried to keep my newfound spirituality to myself and my private life as I wasn't properly grounded in my spirituality yet. My husband was a perfect match to help raise my spiritual vibration. We both had good jobs and I felt like he was my perfect soulmate. Before we tied the knot, I was upfront with him about my promiscuous past and the abusive upbringing I had endured. Despite being shocked initially, he has come to accept and believe in my transformation, and to this day, we consider ourselves incredibly fortunate to have found each other. Then, one day, one of my closest friends informed me about her upcoming wedding and extended an invitation to her bachelorette party. However, when I discovered that the celebration would take place at a male dance club, I felt hesitant. Although she had been my best friend during college, and we were inseparable back then, I had evolved into a different person over the years. After discussing it with my husband, he decided that I should attend the bachelorette party, at least to show my support and leave if I felt uncomfortable. However, the thought of going to such an environment didn't sit well with me, and I couldn't understand why my husband would even permit it. I had specifically hoped he would say no, allowing me to use him as an excuse to decline the invitation when talking to my friend. You see, my friend still remembered the old version of me, the wild, promiscuous one who was always up for a party. But I had changed, and the idea of being in that atmosphere no longer aligned with the person I had become. However, there was a strange part of me that saw my husband's willingness to support my decision, even if I chose to go and then leave if things got uncomfortable. It made me wonder if perhaps destiny had a plan in mind for me on that night. Upon arriving in the city where she resides, I drove there on a Friday evening after work and checked into a hotel. As it turned out, most of the bridal party had also chosen to stay at the same hotel. I was familiar with many of the girls since we had attended college together, but there were a few new faces I hadn't met before. Friday night was the bachelorette party, while the wedding was scheduled for Sunday. As part of the festivities, a group of girls and I headed to the bride's residence, where she lived with her fiancé. Truthfully, I didn't know much about him, except for what I had heard about her dating a very nice doctor. Most of my girlfriends were incredibly attractive, and my girlfriend was no exception. She was exceptionally beautiful, which made her highly sought after. It didn't surprise me that she had managed to win the heart of a good doctor. When I finally met her fiancé, the doctor, I found him to be a kind and loving man. However, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that he might not fully comprehend what he was getting into with my girlfriend. It seemed like he might be in over his head. During our conversation, I noticed certain things he said that made me doubt if he truly understood who my girlfriend really was. We talked about his job, and before parting ways, he even gave me his business card as well. It left me pondering if he grasped the full complexity of being with my girlfriend. It's the story as old as time, the curly hair, good successful young doctor marrying a hot trophy wife that he could brag to his friends about in his country club, and guys would envy him as she looks good in his arm. I was happy for my girlfriend. Everything turned out well for us despite all the shenanigans we pulled in college. The sun set and it was time to hit the male club. The old me have been to a couple of male clubs, so I knew the drill. Back in the days we would entertain the dancers shoving it on our faces, and we would scream with excitement, and sometimes we would end up in the bathroom or dressing room doing blow or having sex. That was during our college days, and it didn't happen too often. That was before we got married or were in serious relationships. Most of the bridal party were married or in a serious relationship. During the bachelorette party, I was at the bar with a friend. Meanwhile, the bride, wearing a bridal veil, was seated on a chair on the stage, with a male dancer provocatively performing in front of her, making suggestive moves. She covered her face with both palms but couldn't help but giggle with excitement, seemingly trying to avoid the dancer's advances. The rest of our friends cheered her on enthusiastically, creating a lively atmosphere. While all this was happening, I sat at the bar with another girl, sipping on my Red Bull to stay awake. The club was filled with several scantily dressed dancers roaming around, as the ladies in attendance vied for their attention, making it an eventful and energetic night. The atmosphere felt somewhat similar to a nightclub, where guys vie for attention from females, except in this case, there were only about 7 or 8 dancers catering to nearly 50 enthusiastic girls. I couldn't help but reminisce about how I might have been just as eager in the past, but now I found myself playing the role of a mother hen, watching over my girlfriends from a corner to ensure things didn't get too wild. As I was engrossed in conversation with the girl at the bar, I failed to notice that one of the dancers had whisked away the bride and a few other girls to their dressing room. It was only when I happened to glance in their direction that I realized they were missing, and concern gnawed at me as I quickly decided to go find them, hoping everything was all right. I inquired around, and someone mentioned that they had gone to the back. Hastily, I rushed to the door, feeling a mix of anxiety and apprehension. Slowly opening the door, I was taken aback by what I saw inside. My girlfriend, the bride, was on all fours, being taken by one of the dancers, while the other 4 friends stood by, watching. The sight shocked me, and I didn't know how to react at that moment. When I entered the room and witnessed their reaction, it wasn't entirely surprising, as such behavior was commonplace back in college. However, I still felt taken aback because I personally knew the 3 girls who were observing the scene, and they were either already married or in serious relationships. I couldn't help but wonder if their significant others would appreciate this kind of situation, and it made me uneasy knowing they were partaking in it. I don't know what compelled me to discreetly take some pictures of my girlfriend engaged with the male dancer, but little did I know that those snapshots would have far-reaching consequences. Immediately after capturing those images with my phone, I intervened and put an end to the situation. It was during that moment that I noticed another one of my friends at the corner of the room, who wasn't visible when you entered from the main entrance. Shockingly, she was involved in an intimate act with another dancer. The whole scene left me feeling bewildered and concerned about the potential fallout from the photos I had taken. What shocked me even more was the fact that the bride was engaging in such intimate activity with the dancer without any protection. I became genuinely concerned about her well-being, fearing that she might be at risk of contracting something. Without hesitation, I intervened and used the excuse of her not using protection to separate them. Gently taking my friend's hand, I guided her out of the room, wanting to ensure her safety and put an end to the potentially risky situation. As soon as we exited the room, the rest of the girls followed behind us. We all gathered in a separate section of the club, and surprisingly, my friend, the bride, acted as if nothing had happened. I decided to stay until the end of the night to keep an eye on things and ensure nothing else went awry. Upon returning to the hotel room, I knew my husband was fast asleep. While attempting to call him, I pulled out my phone, only to be greeted by the first image on my screen, which was of my girlfriend, the bride, engaged with the male dancer. It was a disconcerting sight. I looked at the picture for a moment and I deleted all of it. Nonetheless, I continued with the call to inform my husband about what had transpired during the bachelorette party. At one point, I mentioned to my husband that I had taken pictures, but I had already deleted them. To my surprise, he suggested that I should recover the pictures and anonymously send them to her fiancé. I hesitated, worried that such an action might jeopardize her wedding. He argued that her fiancé should be the one to make that decision. We continued to debate the matter, and I grew frustrated with him for not letting the issue go. After hanging up, I sat in silence, deep in thought. As much as I was angry at him, I knew he had a point. I realized what I had to do, even though it felt like a betrayal of our friendship and the epitome of hypocrisy on my part. The decision weighed heavily on me, knowing the potential consequences of my actions. I must admit, I am no saint, and my past was filled with actions that were even worse than my girlfriend's. However, a thought occurred to me that perhaps my girlfriend needed a wake-up call, just like the termination that led to my own out-of-body experience, which served as a turning point in my life. I saw this as an opportunity for her to have her own wake-up call, and it made me contemplate if this was my path or purpose in life. In the end, I decided to recover the deleted pictures from my iPhone. Feeling too cowardly to use my own email address, I created a new one to send the pictures to her fiancé. The subject of the email read, "What your fiancé did at her bachelorette party," and I attached 3 pictures before finally going to sleep, weighed down by the magnitude of my actions. I woke up the following morning with my phone blowing up with text and missed calls. There was a WhatsApp group of the bridal party and so much crying emojis. The wedding had been called off. I called back my friend, the bride, feeling extremely guilty for secretly taking the pictures and then sending it to her fiancé. I knew I was the cause of her pain. I just broke up her marriage and I was on the phone with her trying to console her, and she doesn't know that I was the cause of her pain. I had unintentionally shattered her dreams and brought her immense pain. Deep down, I felt the heavy burden of remorse, knowing that I was the cause of her heartache. Despite my internal struggle, I offered her words of comfort and consolation, trying my best to support her during this difficult time. However, I couldn't bring myself to reveal the truth about my role in the situation. She remained unaware of my involvement in her pain. I went to stay with her at her parents' house after her fiancé had kicked her out of their home. Realizing the severity of her situation and the intensity of her emotional distress, I knew I needed to extend my stay for an additional week. To be there for her during this critical time, I had to request a 1-week vacation from my job, which they granted. The weight of pain and guilt consumed me, making it challenging to be strong for my girlfriend. Despite my efforts to remain composed, I couldn't help but break down and pour my heart out to my husband about the agony she was enduring. He was understanding and encouraged me not to blame myself, as he believed he had done the right thing in advising me. Nevertheless, I couldn't shake off the feeling of responsibility and guilt for the pain she was going through. During that week, I moved in with my friend at her parents' house, providing her with emotional support and company. We spent much of our time chatting, and during this period, a rumor started circulating that one of our friends was responsible for sending the pictures. Nobody suspected me, and they began condemning the accused friend. In an effort to defend her, I sent a message, suggesting that I had seen one of the male dancers taking pictures when I entered the room through the entrance. Unbeknownst to everyone else, I was well aware of what had truly transpired inside that room. 2 dancers were present, one involved with the bride, and the other receiving a sole favor from another friend in a corner. Despite the troubling circumstances, I did my best to help my friend move past this tragedy. I introduced her to meditation and encouraged her to leave behind the wild college lifestyle, hoping it would aid in her healing process. The situation is still a work in progress, and we continue to talk on the phone every day. Despite this, the burden of guilt remains heavy, and I am inclined to confess to her that I was the one responsible for exposing the pictures to her fiancé. Throughout this dilemma, I have sought guidance from my husband multiple times, and he consistently reiterates that the decision is entirely up to me. If you were in my position, would you keep quiet on the role you played? Or should I come clean for exposing her and destroying her hope of wedding her fiancé, and then brace for the impact?